Welcome everyone to the Men's ADHD support group meeting. Tonight we are talking about fatherhood and what it means to be a dad as someone with ADHD. Now I'm coming at this meeting looking from the outside. I am not a dad yet, but I will say that I was raised by a dad with ADHD, and my dad is definitely somebody who, much of our childhood, when when he was dropping me off at school or we were on our way, leaving the house would take almost 15 to 20 minutes because he would realize as soon as he got by the car that he forgot his keys or something else that he needed that day. And it was just the whole experience being raised by a dad with ADHD. So I am really, really curious as far as the things that you guys have to say on this subject. And I'm also kind of taking notes on the things to prepare for the day that I step into a fatherhood role. But that said, I will start off with you, Brendan. Brendan, what's it like to be a dad with ADHD?
Yeah, it's interesting that you started with time pressure, right? With time, because I think that that's a thing that gets a lot of dads in one way or another. And for your dad, it was like, all right, we got to go, and I'm gonna be doing stuff for like 20 minutes before we leave. And for other dads, it's like, we got to go, get out the door right now. Why aren't we leaving? Like it can kind of go both ways. For me as a dad, like I don't know. I had it like my dad was pretty good. Both of my parents were pretty solid parents. And I think that that's helpful, right? I think that that informs my parenting. And also, they didn't know about ADHD. They didn't know I had ADHD. So they did stuff wrong, even though they didn't want to or intend to. Yeah, that's just the nature of an undiagnosed disorder. And so, for my end on parenting, it's more about trying to meet my kids where they are and then recognizing that there's skills that are missing and how do we get those skills. And my parents kind of did that, but not as much as I really needed them to, because they weren't the ADHD part wasn't recognized. And my parenting stuff has been a bit of a ride. I don't know that I've talked about this in the men's group yet. Is it okay if I go there? You guys know that
Please
whole
do.
story. So all right. And it's public, like it's not like it's a secret. My kids are okay with me talking about it. So my guys, I have identical twin sons who are 15 years old right now. And one of my sons has, I can't even say one of them, both of my sons have obsessive compulsive disorder. I've got one kid with OCD and ADHD, and one kid with like a much lighter touch of OCD and also a light touch of autism. So Nate has like significant OCD, like to the point that he was hospitalized for it. So we're talking like in the shower for 3 hours because he couldn't come out, washing his hands at the sink and crying for 40 minutes because he doesn't want to be washing his hands, but he doesn't know how to stop, right? That level of OCD. Gavin's OCD is just a little more like last night we were watching a movie in the yard and we've got like a sunroom, right? So he's very his one of his things is like both of those doors have to be shut or we're going to get mosquitoes in the house. So if someone leaves like the inside door open but the outside door shuts, he'll go into the sunroom and close that inside door as though it's going to like prevent mosquitoes. And that's just his thing. It's not debilitating like Nate's was. His stuff is more quirky. And so with Nate, it was a really hard road. Kind of, I had to learn about OCD. I had to learn about anxiety in a totally new way. And I had to unlearn a lot of my ADHD stuff because ADHD is a disorder that very often, like, hey, well, if that's hard, like, let's do it in an easier way. Like, why are we doing everything hard? Like, we're going to have to do some stuff hard, but a lot of ADHD, at least to my approach, is like, well, let's figure out how to make it easier to get to the end goal, right? If you do that with OCD, the anxiety just goes, oh, you're going to make it easier. You're going to make it so I don't have to do that thing because that thing is overwhelming and it's not that important anyway. Dope. Then this thing that is important is going to also be overwhelming. And I'm going to make it so that you're going to have to struggle to do that. And then once that domino falls, I'll go on to the next domino, right? And the next thing you know, you're showering for 3 hours. And you're like, there was a time when he wouldn't walk on the streets outside of our house because the school bus drove on him, because the nature of Nate's OCD is it's this thing called emotional contagion OCD, where contagion is germs. So you take the germs out and put something else in, that's emotional contagion. For him, it was his elementary school. So the school buses spread the germs. Um, and it was a really hard road. It was really, really long and really, really brutal. And my ADHD didn't help, but it also didn't necessarily always hinder. I'm a uniquely skilled and suited person to be navigating difficult parenting based on what I do. It was still really hard. I don't know how parents who don't have the background knowledge that I have handle it. It must be completely overwhelming. But yeah, so that like that's not necessarily ADHD dadding, but it's just being dad. This is what happened. And now he's better. He's the two of them are freshmen in high school doing really well. Like we kind of cleaned everything up during 8th grade and finished cleaning it up by about midway through freshman year. And they're doing great. And now I'm having to father them in a way that is different from how I've been dadding them. Like I am now at the point where, because for pacing, COVID hits when they're in 5th grade. 6th grade, I homeschool them. 7th grade is overwhelmed by OCD. Nate is in the hospital until October of 8th grade. 8th grade is kind of, we're still healing. Even into freshman year, we're healing. We are finally healed and have been healed for a little while. So now it's time to grow, right? And that's what I mean when I say fathering, right? Like I have to be really compassionate and really caring and really kind and really like helping my kids heal. That part I've moved through, and now I have to help them grow, which is still a dad job, right? But it's a bit different. I'm finding that I have to start teaching them how to be young men, and they don't know. And that's because we had so much stuff going on for like 4 years that those little lessons that would have otherwise been imparted just weren't imparted. And so now it's kind of, I got to start teaching a whole lot of little lessons in a really short period of time. And so that's my lens right now as a father.
So much to unpack and tap
Yep.
into there.
That's why I stopped.
But Brendan, I appreciate you sharing your perspective, and definitely excited to hear your takes on various subjects within this category tonight. But I just wanted to give some others opportunities to share, and I will go next with Shane, if you're able to right now. I know you're grilling right now.
I mean, isn't that like the ultimate dad thing to be doing, though? Right?
You're such a stereotype.
What is your experience with fatherhood as?
I think my experience with fatherhood, I mean, whereas I didn't have to deal with OCD, right? I did have to deal with, being in an abusive relationship with my first two kids' mom, and then being undiagnosed ADHD, undiagnosed autistic, and dealing with a person who understood how to manipulate and make me the bad guy because I couldn't control my emotional regulation. Right. And I screwed up with my first two kids severely, and I'm still dealing with the aftermath of that. They're functionally estranged. Now we've started building a relationship recently in the last year, but I lost 5-6 years of their life for a big chunk of it, where things were just fucked up. And even when I was there, I wasn't there the way they needed me to be. And that caused a lot of issues. And now I have twins with my new wife. Well, I say my new wife. We've been married for a decade. Now my wife and I have twin 5-year-olds. And I functionally get to start over. And both of my kids have a lot of different signs of different things. But I still find my emotional regulation every now and then is just like, hey, what's up? So like my son wants a snack the other day. I'm like, yeah, go ahead and get a snack. And he comes back and he's just livid. He's just irate. And I could not get him to speak in any kind of words. And a lot of things that I've actually learned actually comes from Brendan. Thank you, by the way. But I was just like, all right, hold on a second. Let's see if we can ask him yes, no questions. All right. Don't you like blueberries? Yeah. Yeah, I love blueberries. Okay, cool. All All right. What about it is messing you up? Is it stale? No. All right, cool. Can you explain to daddy what it was wrong? And he's just like, it's broken. And I stopped the eye roll because it was there. It wanted, oh my God, you're fucked off because the Nutri-Grain bar is broken in half and that's what's messing you up. And I'm like, he doesn't need that right now. Okay. All right, cool. Your sister has hers and she hasn't taken her bite out of it. It's whole. Do you want to just trade with her? Yes. All right. Ask her if you can trade with her. Harley, can I trade mine with you? And Harley's like, sure. And it was just problem solved. But it was just like seeing that initial reaction to a broken Nutri-Grain bar and recognizing my reaction now versus what it would have been, because I would have yelled at him, like, get the fuck over it, but it was different. And I was able to react the way that I needed to react. And it's a lot of stuff like that. And if my emotional regulation had been taken care of, like I've been needing it to be, it would have been significantly worse. And so it's good to see that. And that's kind of like the overall thing, right? It's been 1,000 different circumstances like that of just taking time to figure out what's wrong and then being there for it and celebrating all those small wins that I normally would have been like, oh, cool, there, yay. But taking time to actually celebrate them and getting them used to celebrating them. And I think that's been the game changer for me. It's just taking that time to celebrate the wins for what they are and teaching them that there's no such thing as a small win. And that's been it. That's the thing.
Love that. Yeah, especially the small win thing that you just said. Like a win is a win, period. And that's such an important mindset for people with ADHD to have, especially since we live in a world where we just frequently beat ourselves up for almost every little thing. So I really, really love that style of parenting, and always love your perspective, Shane. All right, so then I'm gonna step into my curious side. So Brendan, this one is for you. So I know I think I know you pretty decently at this point, and I've seen you in person quite a bit. And at the conference, you are no doubt you are nothing short of a busy man. um, your podcast and your entrepreneurship and everything like that. Whenever I'm hearing you speak about things you've got going on, my first thought is, how the hell does this dude manage his time as a dad and not absolutely burn himself out with the level of responsibility that you take on? Like, what keeps you afloat here with the level of responsibility that you juggle?
There's a few different components to that. One component, so one, I did burn out, right? Like I burned out hard, but that, like, I'm about a year out of that, right? I'm a little more than that. I'm like a year and a half, maybe a little more out of that. And I'm finally not burned out anymore. I finally recovered from it. But like all the stuff that went on with Nate was really rough. And at the same time, my dad was having health issues that required me to help, right? And then once Nate was better, my dad's health got worse. And it wrecked me because I had no predictability and I couldn't manage my time because I never knew when I was going to have to go, like, take my dad to the doctors or something. So I couldn't bring on new clients, couldn't start any new initiatives or anything like that. I burned out really hard. And I've put myself back together. And in putting myself back together, there's a few things that kind of keep me going and keep me from burning out professionally, I guess. Because my previous burnout was like, I can only help so much, and that's killing me, right? There's a definite ceiling. Now it's more of like the stuff that I'm taking on, it's under my control. I'm doing these things on purpose. They're by choice, that kind of stuff. And so the things that keep me afloat are, I am motivated by helping people. I like helping people recharges me. It helps me heal, right? So that's a big piece of it. And also, like, it helps that I have the stature in this industry that I have. That's no small thing for me, and it's no small motivator for me. I take it as a point of pride, and I take it as a point of responsibility to be serving this community in the way that I need to be, with integrity and with dignity and with kindness and compassion. And so that, like, those are all values. And that when you're coming from a place of values, you're usually doing okay. In terms of spreading myself as thin as I do, yeah, not great. Not always doing that the way, not always perfect, but I've learned to set boundaries, right? Like, even in this group, I'm like, look, this is what I can do. The end. Like, that's what I can do. And I do a little more sometimes? Yes, but I'm pretty transparent about, this is where my boundaries are. I'll go past them every now and then, but this is what can be expected. And so that's in this group. That's also, I'm on the board of directors for an event called CalmerCon, which is a sensory sensitive pop culture and comics event in Boston. And like, my job is to bring in professional resources, so mental health people, tutors, that kind of stuff, for the parents to be connected to. I already have that network for the most part, so I'm able to lean into that network and bring people in and do just enough, right? And let the rest of the team do other stuff. In my business, like, I'm building a team, right? Like, Shane is part of that team. Shane is my social media guy, right? And we meet on Mondays and talk about, sometimes it's just what's going on, and sometimes it's social media stuff. It kind of depends on what's more important. And some of me not burning out is like, I'm not in a rush. So if Shane and I are like, we're going to do this big important thing, and then one of us is like, I don't really want to do that big important thing because, like, stuff is happening in my life, I'm like, cool, whatever, we'll do the big important thing later. It's fine. It's not whatever. And that is helpful. And that, some of that speaks to my wife. Like, I married well, and my wife is neurotypical, and she makes enough money for me to be able to not always make enough money. And that's good. And also, like, my kids are better. That helps. Even the book, right? Like, I've got help with the book. I've got a co-writer with the book. I've got to finally have a virtual assistant. Like, building a team is part of it. Like, no one is playing at the level that I'm playing at, and no one is playing at higher levels than me without having a team. And that team is important. And that it's not just professional, it's also personal, right? Like, part of my team is my wife. She's part of the personal team with the boys. They've got teachers and stuff that are engaged with them now. My boys are part of my team because they can take care of their damn selves. Like, they're 15. I can now give them directives and they can go and do it. And if they don't know how, they'll ask and they'll come back and check, but I can trust them to go do stuff. Nate had a D in English like a month ago, and we were like, oh, that doesn't work. Like, let's fix this. And he needed a little bit of support from me, but for the most part, he all by himself got it up to a B-. So, like, that's team as well. And then friends and family and stuff all count as part of the team. So some of it too is having a team and knowing who to turn to for support and those sorts of things. And another piece that is very ADHD, I mostly have my hyperactivity trained at this point. I've got the bumpers in the bowling alley lane for them. Like, my hyperactivity, I can use it to activate and do stuff when I need to. And I can do that stuff at a bananas clip and drop in a hyperfocus when necessary. I can mostly use it for good instead of for tearing me apart. So that's there too.
Love it, Brendan. Love it. Now, Shane, what about you as another busy man who takes on a lot of different responsibilities? What does managing your time and energy as a dad with ADHD look like?
For me, a lot of managing my time is leaning on my wife, to be completely truthful. You know, like, especially now, summertime's hitting us, right? So the kids are going to be home. And so I won't have as much time during the day to be able to do a lot of the stuff that I normally do during the day. So now it's just balancing that. And then when Darcy gets done with school, getting back into the groove of things, her taking care of the kids during the day, me giving her breaks at night. Because that's the big key that I've learned for my family, is for me to really intentionally recognize that my wife needs breaks too. And making sure that I'm saving that space to at least say, hey, do you need to go lay down? Do you need to rest? You know, do you need to take some time to yourself? And if she says no, she's good. Take that as it is, because my wife isn't the person to sit here and say, no, I'm fine, and not mean it. because we've had that communication. Because if you tell me you're okay, I'm going to take you at your word for it, because social cues ain't there. So if I ask you, then I'm asking, and I need to know. And if you don't communicate that, then don't get mad at me later on down the road whenever I take you at your word. And my wife took that to heart, and she said, I will make sure that I say when I need that space. And I was like, okay, cool. And then respecting that. As soon as she sits there and says, hey, I need a break. All right, give me 15 minutes to wrap up what I'm working on, and then I'll be out there and you can go lay down, whatever you need. And that's been the key right there, is just making sure that the partnership that I have with my wife, both of us are aware of where our spoons are at. And if my wife needs help, then I help. And if she knows that if I need help too, I will come to her and say something. And if I do, she does a lot of the same things. Give me 30 minutes and I'll be right there, and you can go do what you need to do. So a lot of balancing my time is balancing my relationship with my wife, and us just communicating really clearly about the different things that we need when we need them. And then making sure that we also take our time to ourselves. When her parents are in town, we are really working hard to kind of go on little dates and stuff like that, and getting a babysitter and going on dates. And because she works hard. And a lot of the work I do is more in the nonprofit realm. So my money isn't a lot. And even as a coach, I'm on the lower end of the pay scale, even though Brendan tells me I should charge way more. I still have a need to help people, and that recharges my batteries. So a lot of the work I do is in the comment sections in the men's group, and it's writing blogs and different things of that nature. And so, yeah, it's just leaning on my friends and doing body doubling in Focus 101 and being in the Discord. And like, me and Dave have been really spending a lot of time. Like, he'll be in the Discord and I'll jump in there and we'll just kind of hang out for a little bit. And, leaning on my friends, making sure I'm making time for a friend time, and then making sure that I'm going to sleep at a decent time so that I have the energy the next day to be able to spend time with my kids the way that they need it. So it's just kind of an overall similar to what I have to do with ADHD to manage that. The tools that I've learned through that have also been able to help me to be a better father and be there for my kids and my wife and my friends.
Interesting. So when you were talking, Shane, there was a lot of mention about communication and how you work with your wife. And that said, I have a question for the two of you, Brendan and Shane. And if anybody else has a perspective on this, feel free to raise your hand to either ask the question or comment. There's a lot of members in our group that struggle with this right here. And it's, how do you navigate co-parenting with a partner who may not have ADHD? Brendan, you want to take that?
Yeah, let me play.
Got it.
So I'm going to start by going off to the side, because I think it frames things in a way that's important. The traditional expectations of masculinity get messed up by ADHD. And that, I think it's important that we start there, right? So when you think masculinity in like the Western version of it, certainly the American version, we're looking at things like independence and self-sufficiency, right? Which, if you're an ADHD dad, that's going to be hard, right? Like, you're not going to be the Marlboro Man. And if you are the Marlboro Man, it's because you're not fitting into mainstream society, not because you're like just that independent. And probably the Marlboro Man was not fitting in with mainstream society. And that's a nice, maybe a useful reframe for those of us who want to be that guy and can be. Physical prowess too, right? Like, a lot of people with ADHD have comorbidities that make that tricky, that like you've got dyspraxia and stuff, and you're having trouble with fine motor control and those sorts of things. There's an expectation that you're going to be tough and resilient. And people with neurodiverse challenges, like, we're asked to be resilient all the time just to exist in the neurotypical world. And that can burn us out and make us jaded and make us sort of standoffish. And that can be like mistaken for tough, but isn't necessarily. Or we can, when it's time to be tough, we might be so worn down that it's difficult for us to actually be that tough guy that we want to be, right? And there's also the expectation, like when we kind of move from the barbarian warrior king into the scholarly king, right? We're also expected to be intellectual and logical and emotionally restricted and all that stuff. And like that is difficult when there's a emotional dysregulation going on. And then folks who are men are also expected to be that financially successful person, which ADHD can undermine pretty effectively. So I think it's important that we kind of take that lens, right? And I'm not saying that we can't do those things, because certainly we can, but they're potentially going to be more difficult. And if you're someone who's looking for guidance and more support in a group like the Men's ADHD Support Group, probably some of this stuff you're finding is difficult. And that's okay, right? Because those expectations of masculinity don't have to be what masculinity is. That they're not necessarily real. And a lot of men that we think are super tough or super successful or whatever aren't, right? Like, yeah, cool, great. You're like the most financially successful person in the whole wide world, but you're not connected to your family at all, or you don't have one, right? And that's now where we're going with fatherhood. So that piece is there. And another component to that is when we are not meeting with those areas in the way that we feel like we should, we often, then the dysregulation comes in, because now I feel less than, now I feel ashamed, now I feel bad, right? And that leads to not communicating clearly with my wife because I can't, because there's too much guilt and shame in there, and I can't say things that I feel that I maybe need to say, but I can't say it because I feel bad about it. I think that stuff is playing a prominent role potentially in some of the challenges when it comes to navigating those relationships and co-parenting and all that stuff. And also just the like, I'm supposed to be the tough guy, so I guess I'll be the hammer when it comes to parenting. And like, if that's all you know, everything's going to be a nail, right? And because another piece of this is men aren't taught how to parent. Women are taught how to parent. As girls, they're taught how to parent. Men are not taught how to parent. And so we become fathers, and now the expectations have changed. Now we're expected to father, right? We're expected to be dad. We didn't, like in the 80s, that's not true. My dad was not expected to be an actively engaged father. He kind of was, but he wasn't expected to be. And so we're not taught skills growing up on how to navigate little kids and how to change a diaper and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden we have a kid and we're trying to figure all these things out as we go. And the women in our lives are like, you just changed the diaper. Why are you so frustrated by our child having a fit? It's like, well, because I've never been around a child that had a fit before, but you have. And so my wife knows, right? In my relationship, I have a ton of experience with kids. I've been working with kids since I was in high school. So like that stuff was comfortable for me. And in some ways, it was a little bit of a reverse with me and my wife. When Nate started having the mental health stuff go on, and when Gavin did too, that was comfortable for me. I understood it because that's what I do for a living. And my wife, who is a scientist and works with mice, was like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. And she kind of had her own struggles where she felt like she was supposed to be in that role, but I was the one in that role. And we had that happen, which was interesting because I've often felt like I'm supposed to be making all the money and she does. And so we're kind of gender flipped in some ways. And does that all make sense? Am I like at least laying a foundation that's useful, if not connecting dots?
100%. You nailed it, Brendan. That was amazing. I loved everything you said about the masculine roles and the pressure we put on ourselves. That was outstanding. Thank you. Shane, what about you? What's your take on navigating co-parenting with a partner who may not have ADHD?
So my wife doesn't have ADHD, but she is a special needs teacher. So I get to cheat a little bit. I think one of the things that I had to learn was my wife's a special needs teacher, so she gets it. And that made her safer for me. One of the biggest struggles that I see in the group is people who deal with a parent or a spouse who doesn't get it, doesn't want to get it, doesn't think that it's that big of a deal, doesn't understand why, when we find out late in life, like, why are we making such a big deal out of it? Like for us, a lot of times it helps us explain and understand holy crap, I've been dealing with this thing in this entire time. But sometimes we've also got to recognize that a lot of damage has been already done. And we have to own that, but at the same time, our partner has to also own it. Because some of the damage that's been done has also been on their part by not taking the time to understand, especially once we find out that there's ADHD involved. Now, do they have a responsibility to understand and things like that? But if you get hurt, right, if you get physically injured or disabled or something like that, at the same time, like, your partner hopefully steps up to help. But again, if there's been a lot of damage done from our emotional dysregulation, our lack of communication, our social interactions, not having enough spoons, not taking care of the house like we need to, not being the partner that we need to be, sometimes there's just too much. And I think that was the situation with my ex-wife and I. Was when I finally realized that there were things about myself that I needed to work on, too much damage had been done. She had gotten too used to being abusive and had too much ammunition to use against me. And, that caused me to be dealing with even more significant emotional dysregulation, especially with 2 kids in a mix. And a lot of guys in a group really deal with that situation where there is too much damage and they're dealing with the overwhelm of finding out that they have ADHD, kids that are going through different transitions through elementary and middle school to high school. There's just too much. And sometimes it's just not realistic to expect a relationship to survive that. But for those people who are able to get their partner to understand those situations, I think that's one of the strengths of the men's group. Is a lot of times we see the communication come through a post where it's guy going, how do I explain to my wife like what ADHD does? And how do I explain to her what emotional dysregulation is, or the rejection sensitivity, or, hey, has anybody noticed that you're hypersexual? And like, how do I navigate that kind of dynamic with my wife who doesn't have as much of a sex drive as I do? All of these different questions come through the group. And what we have to kind of understand is like there has to be a redefinition of how we live our lives. And, Brendan kind of touched on it earlier. A lot of ADHD is figuring out the ways that work for us. And that means now that we understand this thing about ADHD, what ways work best for us to communicate? What ways don't work for us to communicate? What things do we need? And then having that conversation with our spouse and making sure that if they want to be supportive, this is how you're supportive. And this is what I need. But then also understanding that now we have to intentionally make sure we're doing that for them as well. Because now we know, right? Now we know that executive function is part of our issue. When I am on and my brain is working the way that I need it to work, I need to be using that time to make sure that I am going and doing the chores that I need to get done, especially as a stay-at-home dad, and making sure that I am using my Alexa to remind me to, go do the dishes when I need to do them, making sure that I am using my Alexa to remind me to clean the kitchen or do the bathroom, and making sure I am setting up those appointments for the kids and taking them where they need to go and getting there on time. Like, the only way for me to do that is to make sure that my wife understands, hey, I've got to do this thing. Can you remind me? And if she remembers to, cool, but I still have to use my tools to be able to manage the things that I need to manage. And now that I know because of ADHD that I need external tools and not to depend on my own internal calendar and clocks and stuff like that because they don't exist, that's been kind of the thing. But also letting my wife understand that I have to have external tools. Don't expect me to remember to do something in 15 minutes if you don't see me set an alarm for it. Or if you don't see me ask Alexa to remind me in 15 minutes or something like that. Like, so when she asked me to do something, hey, make sure you set an alarm for 15 minutes because I need you to come take care of this XYZ thing. And that's taken a lot of time for us to get used to that communication style to do that. It's not just, hey, I need you to do this thing in 15 minutes. It's, hey, set an alarm for 15 minutes to come do this thing for me. And it's her knowing if Shane's not looking at her, he did not hear what she just asked him to do. If Shane has a computer screen or a phone screen or a book or anything like that in front of him, he may have answered the question, but he did not hear what was just said in a way that's going to allow him to actually follow through with whatever he agreed to do. So whenever she's asking me to like take out the trash or something like that, it's, hey, can you pause that for just a second? I have to ask you a question. All right, give me 1 minute. And then as soon as I get to a place where I can pause, okay, what do you need? Me taking the time to look at her. We just talked about this in Dave's relationship and communication talk that he did, is making sure that she knows how to get my attention without shaming me or making me feel guilty or frustrated or any of those things. Just recognizing to get my attention, to pay attention to her without her feeling like she's mothering me, which is the other side of the coin. We don't want our wives to have to mother us. And I think that's been the biggest key, is her taking the time to understand how I communicate and how to get me to communicate and follow through with the things that I need to follow through using external tools. And then not just depending on me to infer that I need to set an alarm, actually make that a part of the communication that she gives me. Hey, set an alarm for 15 minutes because I'm going to need you to take care of the kids for a little bit. It's not me having to remember 15 minutes. It's, oh, I need to set an alarm right now for 15 minutes to go take care of the kids. And I think that's been the biggest key, was her understanding those things.
Well said, Shane. I definitely use Alexa. Actually, I had Alexa going off right when I started this meeting, reminding me I have to take out the garbage. So I'm a huge believer in the external usage of technology. Okay, no problem. Adam, I see you have your hand up. What do you have to say or add on fatherhood and ADHD, or ask a question?
Well, I actually wanted to put in a comment and a question too, but more with the relationship aspect. I run my own group. I call it the heavy hitters. And Brendan, you're sure I always throw in your name every once in a while. They hit a wall of awful. So you're a heavy hitter for sure. It makes me think of my past relationships where, you know what, there are some cases that there's only some boundaries, some understandings could only have formed up in the beginning. And when I mean the beginning, I mean the beginning conception of the relationship, and to reform the view of a person. ADHD is such an invisible thing. It's not like I'm in a wheelchair that I can't get anything from the second counter. It's something that people could forget consistently that you have this kind of thing. And it takes surefire, whole, almost taking on a religion type of transformation on taking it as serious. You put a lot of assertive language on knowing how does your ADHD work, and pretty much you got it almost sounding like you'd lock it down from beginning to end, when I'm at the best and when I need help. So that's assertive language, that things I had to really transform and learn. And it helps me think that there was not a lot of help I could have done after the fact on relationship that has passed on. So yeah, I wanted to put that in there, and will help me in the future relationships to know how to work this and make sure the partner understands, and how many times I got to reaffirm that. And second thing with the fatherhood, I don't have children of my own, But I have a brother who has 3 kids. He's not attempting his ADHD current tendencies. All his kids, I suspect, have ADHD. And the struggle that I see he had, let's just get to, he had been financially insecure for many times. And he felt inadequate, felt impotent of failure after failure and after failure. And yeah, to not have this assertive language for him to get through it, he's just living life in a reactionary struggle each day, trying to contend with his wife, trying to contend with his children. One is already turning 18, so it's just one headache, and it's girl too. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting you touched on that. I'm actually going to go that direction with this discussion shortly. Kyle, I saw you put your hand up. Did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yes, so when dealing with ADHD, I may not be a father, but when I know that me and my family, mostly my dad and I, have had ADHD, and it runs through the family, and we tend to forget things and do and act and sometimes have this. Our relationship is good, but like it sometimes feels like when it comes to ADHD, I want to try to make sure our boundaries are like well handled, or we are understanding it one another, because sometimes feel like we miscommunicate, or I feel like I miscommunicate at some things, and I don't want to feel like I'm damaging a relationship or like a friendship like that. So is there any suggestions on how to manage that sort of misinformation sort of side?
Yeah, so you're talking about when you feel misunderstood, maybe after like having some type of an emotional dysregulation moment. Am I capturing your question correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually perfect because that was one of the questions I was going to ask Shane and Brendan. Just to segue it into the dad thing, and this should still hopefully provide you value, Kyle. I mean, as everybody here knows, I mean, a lot of us in this Zoom meeting right now have studied, I mean, ADHD from the best of the best, right? From like Ned Hollowell and Russell Barkley and all that. And there are moments, although we can do all these things, there are moments in which our ADHD can get the best of us. And yeah, just similar to Kyle, I'm just curious to hear your perspectives on how do you handle situations where your ADHD leads to potentially misunderstandings or conflicts with your children or spouse.
This is actually a solid way for me to go into what I was going to say earlier, which is, speaking of studying from the best of the best, right? The best thing I did is not something I did. It's actually something my wife did. But the best thing we did for our marriage is we went to an ADHD training together. And the reason it was so useful was because my wife, one, took it seriously. She wasn't there like, this is stupid, right? Like, if that's the attitude, then it wouldn't have worked. But my wife was there willing to listen and willing to learn and all that stuff. And in going to the training, it opened up her eyes to how I worked in a way that was meaningful for her. And in a way that I'm pretty sure has saved our marriage from a bunch of little fissures and cracks that might have ended it, right? We don't have the little tiny cracks that would have been ripped open when the big crises hit. So we've been able to navigate those crises and have our marriage be fine. So it's actually, I can't recommend highly enough getting everybody on the same page. And I this is not me pushing my services. This is just letting you know that people do it, right? Like I do trainings where I'm like, bring everybody, and it's the same amount of money if it's just you. Like I'm not charging more for private stuff. If it's a workshop for school or something, that's different. And I've had grandparents in there. I've had aunts and uncles. I've had best friends. I've had mom and dad and the brothers and sisters. So that's one thing. And it connects to this, right? Like, if the people in our lives understand what ADHD is and how it works, they understand better what we're all about and how we work. And so that, I think, is an important thing, assuming they're willing to participate in that and play along. Because I recognize not everyone's family members, wife, spouse, best friend, whoever is willing to. But if they are, it's ADHD. The more we learn about it, the better off we are for ourselves and for our kids and for our spouses and friends and potentially even our employers. So that's kind of that's the thought that I was having that I think connects to what Kyle was asking too.
Love it. Shane, what about you? How do you handle situations where your ADHD may lead to misunderstandings or conflicts with either children or your spouse, etc.?
So when it comes to like emotional situations, disagreements, if I have an emotional dysregulation moment where I snap off and pop off and say something stupid, or if I'm just down and my emotions are kind of just all over the place, a lot of times it's just like letting the people around me know, kind of like what Brendan was talking about, but also kind of just giving people the heads up. I'll use dating for an example. Once you get into a happy medium of a place where the relationship is getting somewhere, having a conversation about emotional dysregulation and what it looks like and what can happen. And then when it does happen, because it's going to, even if I don't stop it, going back, owning my part of it and apologizing for my part of it, and making sure that I explain, sorry about that. The thing that you said really triggered a moment for me. This has to do with what we've talked about in the past. My bad. I really do apologize. Let's talk about the problem and start working towards the solution of what you were asking me about. But that's after the fact, right? But it's legitimately saying I'm sorry and being serious about it, and then going, okay, I don't want to be mad at you. The situation's screwed up. Let's talk about the situation and what about it we can do anything about. Also recognizing when there's not anything you can do anything about it, either one of you. Like it's just a screwed up situation. So say your family's dealing with a lot of financial issues and you're just having to live in a small house or something like that, and it's just there's nothing you can do about it right now. All right, we can't control this. So let's just make the best of it as we can. Dealing with a father or a parental figure and wanting to make sure that you have a relationship is a lot like that. Hey, I'm going to have some moments where I'm going to misunderstand something you said, or I'm going to hear something you said, and it's going to trigger some emotions that I'm going to deal with. If that happens, I will do my best to come back and apologize. I may need to go for a walk. I may need to take some time to myself to cool down and then come back when I'm calmer and have a conversation about it. If I do that, don't press me. Don't keep forcing the issue, because when I tell you that, I'm trying my best to keep calm when my emotions are trying to take over. And I think that's been a big part of it as well with me and my mom, who have a really weird relationship. There's things that she's done to me that were really traumatic that sometimes get brought up in really unintended ways where I have to go for a walk, But I communicated that up front with her, like, hey mom, if I tell you I have to go for a walk, then that's me. I'm dealing with some emotional issues. I need to go for a walk, calm down, and then come back and have a conversation. I even had this conversation with my ex-wife. Like, hey, it's very much that having that communication up front, communicating that, recognizing those things when they start to be overwhelming, or recognize when your emotional dysregulation is starting to get out of control, and either leaving the situation as quickly as we possibly can, using coping mechanisms that we've learned in therapy. Hopefully everybody's getting therapy, because that's an important part of managing ADHD. And then turning around and immediately apologizing when you've calmed down if something like that does happen. If there's an issue with miscommunication and people not understanding what you said or something along those lines, ask questions. Do you understand what I mean? No? Okay. What did you not understand? In a actual place of loving and kindness, to use Dave's terms. Maybe I can clarify something. asking for clarification if they say something that we thought we understood, but apparently did not. All right, I misunderstood what you meant by that, apparently, because I didn't do what you asked me to do. What did you need me to do? And let me make sure I understand it. Mark's actually doing this a couple of times in here, especially whenever he asked about the clarifying question, Kyle, whenever he did that. That was him making sure he understood where you were coming from and phrasing it in a way that he understood. We have to learn to do the very similar things about the things that we are wanting to understand, is repeating it back in a way that we get. And if that's wrong, giving them the opportunity to kind of give us the feedback that it's wrong and how it's wrong.
Yeah. And Shane, I hate to interrupt, but I just want to say that is especially in the case when we're talking through text.
Very much so.
Yeah.
There's a reason why people with ADHD send out fucking blocks of text, because we want to be very clearly understood, but the other person, if they have ADHD and they see a block of text, it's like, what the fuck? I lost my train of thought halfway through that. So really having to understand that. And I think that's been one of my biggest things.
I just want to say a few words. I really appreciate you guys helping me out and getting me together. And I really appreciate coming to the meetings. I know I don't come to the meetings often because I'm pretty much busy with other stuff that's been going on in my life. But I guess I just have one question. If when it comes to things that are out of your control, when it comes to your ADHD and certain things and trying to interact with people, what would be one piece of advice that you can give me?
When talking to people in your life about your ADHD,
Yes.
be discerning about who you talk to and who you tell about it, right? Because not everyone needs to. Maybe it's not necessarily the case that not everyone needs to know, but not everyone deserves to know. Not everyone is safe to know, right? So be discerning about that. If someone has already demonstrated to you that they don't have your best interests at heart, then telling them is not necessarily going to benefit you, right? And so that's one part. And then when you talk to them about it, a thing to be mindful of is we really want to come across clearly that we are not using ADHD as an excuse. We are using it as a reason. Where I'm not telling you about my ADHD so that I am excused from all the mistakes that I make and I don't have to feel bad about those mistakes and I don't have to fix the problems that my mistakes cause. Like, that's not the deal. The reason that we tell people is so that they understand that we're going to make mistakes and that those mistakes are not personal. It's not us trying to hurt them. And that if we do make a mistake, we will clean up our stuff. Like, we will do the things that we need to do to fix the problems that we caused. And we will be better at fixing those problems if it's safe for us to ask for help if and when we cause them. And that means that some people need to know we have ADHD so we can ask them for help. That's kind of the vibe we want to be giving, and maybe even saying those exact words. So that's one piece. If we come across like we're just saying, well, I have ADHD and that means that I can screw up and it doesn't matter, like, that's not the plan. And then pay attention to how that conversation goes and make decisions accordingly about how big of a role in your life those people get to have, because they're earning the size of their role as you talk to them. And it doesn't mean that size can't change, right? Like, someone seems like they're saying everything right, and then it turns out later on they're not doing it. Like, okay, cool, the role gets smaller. Someone who struggles with this conversation at first, but then later on steps up big, cool, their role can get bigger, right? But we want to be mindful of that as we talk to people too. Does that answer your question in a way that is useful?
Yes, very much. Well, I gotta get going. Thank you again. All of you have a wonderful day.
You too, Kyle.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You had your hand up before, Brendan. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, because there's an underlying component to all of this that I think we need to rise to the front. And that is, we gotta own our stuff, right? Like all the stuff Shane's been saying, the stuff I've been saying, if you're not at peace with your ADHD, like it's not going to work. You know what I mean? Like if you're not at peace with your ADHD, this all gets a lot harder. Because when you make a mistake and someone talks to you about it, you're more likely to get defensive. And as soon as we get defensive, we're dysregulated and it's off to the races, right? So one piece of this is we've got to be able to come to terms with our ADHD and let it be a reason, but not an excuse. Because if we're trying to make an excuse with it, we'll know that and it'll dysregulate us because we'll feel guilty. But you got ADHD, right? My favorite example of this is I have asthma, right?
Yep.
Sometimes when I'm doing workshops, I'll fake an asthma attack, or every now and then I have a real one. And I will apologize for being too lazy and unmotivated to breathe. And then, yeah, that's usually the response is people start laughing because that's ridiculous, right? How is that any different from the way we often treat ADHD? Like an ADHD person forgets to do something, does something halfway, starts it late, and we're like, oh, too lazy and unmotivated. But that's not what's up. What's up is it's ADHD. In the same way that sometimes my lungs don't work as well as I would like them to, sometimes my prefrontal cortex does not work as well as I would like it to. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's such a good way to look at it. And we apologize for our ADHD quite often.
Yep. I almost never apologize for my ADHD. I'll tell people, I'll say, yeah, it's because I have ADHD. Like that's why that happened. In the same way that I'll say, yeah, it's because I have asthma. That's why I can't breathe right now. And it's because it's a reason. And the other piece to this that is especially important for men to hear is we are not the main character. Your life will get so much easier if you stop thinking of yourself as the main character. There will still be times like you get to be the main character still on occasion, but the less we try to be the main character and the more we view ourselves as a supporting character in someone else's story who is the main character, the easier stuff gets. I know of the areas of my life where I'm still feeling like I'm the main character. And those are the areas of my life that I fight with the most, where I find the most stress and anxiety. And I'm working on putting those areas down. And eventually I will. But it's just easier if you're like, I'm a character in the story, but I'm not the main character. It takes a lot of pressure off. It gives you a lot of emotional distance to use to regulate.
Love that perspective. Love it. All right, we are going to be approaching a point where we're wrapping up. So just please use this time to raise your hand and share any final thoughts or questions you may have. Boza, I did see you just had your hand up, and I wanted to give you a chance to comment with what you wanted to say or ask what you wanted to ask.
Hi, my name's Bo. I think it's really important that you share a working idea of your own ADHD. Because if you share a partial idea, if you don't have plans for yourself, it's very hard for anyone else to understand. And that's true of every relationship. It's certainly true of relationships with children. Although I want to thank all of you guys because it's very hard to not be the demon in your own opera.
Yep.
And this chance to see how other people do it matter-of-factly, how they face themselves, how they accept themselves, is tremendously powerful. I see all sorts of people having relationship problems and coming into this halfway or discovering ADHD halfway into a relationship is almost always a doom for the relationship because the journey is just too hard for anyone else to take.
Well said. Well said. And that segues into the tip that I wanted to leave you all with. I'm not a dad with ADHD. I went into this with a little bit more of a curious mindset. But the one thing that I will say is that navigating ADHD can be really tough. It's not an easy thing to do. And that only gets more challenging. And I promise I'm not trying to paint this with the victim mentality. I'm just being real here. But that I would imagine gets even more challenging when we have the responsibility of a father and all the different things to juggle that come with that. So what I would want to say is that we are here to be exactly what Bo, I think you said. We are here to make everyone feel less alone. And as we take on the challenges of being a dad with ADHD, my encouragement to you is that you understand that support is a really good thing for you here. And you have other members of our community that you can absolutely lean on. Brendan is an amazing resource. ADHD Essentials is an awesome podcast. Some of you probably listened to it already, but do not take on this challenge alone. Help is here. So, Brendan, do you have any? Because this is going on our podcast as well, but anything you have coming up that you want to plug? What's on the way?
The book is coming eventually, sometime in hopefully in the next year or so. So I'm writing a book on the wall of awful. It hopefully is a big deal. So that's the thing to keep an eye out for. Hopefully by the time this drops, but sometime in the not too distant future, my website will be updated and there'll be a place where you can go to register for like alerts when the book is actually coming out and sign up for pre-release stuff. So that's coming sometime in the next few months.
Cool. And the ADHD Essentials podcast is always how to find you.
That's true too.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. I hope everyone got some value from this. And we will see a lot of you in our next Men's ADHD Support Group Zoom meeting. I hope everyone has an awesome rest of the day, and happy Father's Day to the dads with ADHD. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.